prayed more than anybody could have ever prayed in this room. Those Pharisees, they see who's keeping company with Jesus. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." And friend, that is a great place for a hallelujah. So that's the context to which Jesus, hearing the muttering over the, I believe, probably pretty fascinating conversation between tax collectors, sinners, outcasts, cripples, and everything else that he's kind of got around him. Like his entourage, like if you saw Jesus in his entourage, you'd be like, honey, lock the doors and close your purse. But that's our Savior. And the Pharisees are off to the side, muttering, look at that guy. Look at who he's keeping company with. And Jesus hears their muttering, and he begins to tell them this collection of 3 parables, a parable about a lost sheep, a lost coin, and then culminates it with this parable of the prodigal son that we're going to enter into today. So that's his response, and that's the context that he enters into. So everybody hearing this parable are both the prodigals, the tax collectors, the prostitutes, the crippled, the lame, the sinners, and also the religious elite who sinned in a different way. And he starts the parable in verse 11. Let's read it together. A friend's house. Oh, I'll talk about that later. Luke 15:11. Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. So there's a guy, he's got 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. All right, now this, again, we're going to pause. We're going to go through this piece by piece. So you have a younger son, and he says to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." Now, I want to walk you through Hebrew inheritance regulations and what they would normally do. So if I'm a father, like I am, and I have 2 sons, all right? So if I was a Hebrew father and I have 2 sons, like I do, Titus is my older son, Ezra is my younger son. The way it would work is that when I died, the older son was supposed to get a double portion. So Titus would get 2/3, and then Ezra would get 1/3 of the entire shoemake estate, which I'm hoping is not a whole lot. I'm hoping to end this life on E and just let them figure things out for themselves. But in that day and age, the fact that you would actually get an inheritance, that was deemable, was normal. Now, timing is the issue here. He comes to his father and asks for something that he would only get if his father was dead while his father is still alive. And thus doing so, he is essentially saying to his father, you are dead to me. And again, put yourself in the context of everybody who's hearing this. The religious leaders there in the crowd are going, oh man, and again, they don't have the whole thing. Pause right here. When this son goes, "Father, give me my share of the estate," the religious elite in the crowd are going, he better be taking his belt off. At this point, the next line should be, "And the father did not spare the rod. He beat the out of his child." That's how, in their mind, that's going, this is where the story goes. Because you would never, ever in a million years go to your father in an honor culture. You would never go to your father and ask for that. And he goes here, and he asks his father for that. Some of the things that we can know about this, that we pick up through the story kind of as it goes, is that because of the fact that Jesus, as he's telling this parable, he never makes mention of the fact that this younger son, or even really the older son, he never makes mention of the fact that they're married. It points to the fact that both of these are likely young men. That this is most likely a teenage young man. And what's happening here, and this is the way sin works in my life and it works in your life, and it's coming out in this story. What he wants is the father's resources. He wants what the father's has. He wants the father's resources, but he does not want the rules that comes with the father. And so what happens is, though I want the father's resources, I don't want the father's rules. What I will do is I will sacrifice the relationship to get what I want. That's how almost every sin in our life plays itself out. I want what you could give me, God. I don't want the rules that you bind so that could be something I receive. And so what I will do is I will sacrifice our relationship to get the resources I think I need to have a happy, fulfilled life. And this decision, this whole give me my share of the estate, there's no way that that's a decision that you just roll out of bed and make. You know, that you don't just wake up on the wrong side of the bed and come to your dad and essentially ask a question that says, Father, you're dead to me. This is likely something that people hear in this story. You know, maybe somebody there in the crowd is going, yeah, I remember how my kid said that to me. I remember when my kid came in and said, I hate you, Mom. I remember those things. And this is a young man butting up against a father's authority, a father's reign, a father's guidance. And he's saying, I can do this better without you. And there's entitlement here because he's going, listen, the best thing that you could ever give to me is just to give to me what you owe to me. The thing that I'm rightly supposed to have because of my bloodline, because we share the same last name, the thing that I'm rightly supposed to have is half or 1/3 of the entire estate. He says, Dad, I don't want you. I want what you can give me. Now, at this point, when we get here and we see, so he, that father, divided his property between them. This is where the jaws of both the Anawim, the have-nots, and the haves in the crowd would have fallen to the ground and gone, what? He gave it to him? He didn't banish him from the family and from the city so that he could never return? He gave it to him? And one of the things I want you to pick up on here, because a lot of times we hear the story of the prodigals and we think, oh man, the climax of the story, the most important thing of the story is the way the father welcomes the son in and the love that's shown as he forgives him and he shows him this unconditional love. But I want you to see the love of the father in this right here, that he divided his property between them and he loved the son enough to let him be free to fail. See, a lot of times we just think there's love at the end of the story. And we think this is negligence. This is stupidity. This is a dumb father. I would never do this. But this father knows some things about love that we could learn about love. And that love that is forced is not love. Love that says, you must stay in this house. You must obey these rules. You must do all these things. And I don't care if you do it happy. I don't care if you do it mad. I don't care if you do it sad. I'm going to force you to be here and to abide by my rules. What Jesus is showing in this story is that is not your father. Your father is actually willing to let you go in freedom, knowing that one, it may hurt you and that it may hurt him, but he is willing to let you run. He refuses, hear me on this, he refuses to force his love upon you. Some of you, if you're honest, you kind of wish he would, right? I wish you would just lock me up and bind me in I wish you just, that's why we write songs like bind my wandering heart to thee. Like we want God, I love that song. It's a great song. But God is not going to bind your wandering heart to him. He's going to show you more who he is so that your heart refuses to go anywhere else but directly to him. So he gives it. He gives him what he has. In verse 13, it says, not long after that, the son got together all he had. This is essentially him liquidating his assets. This is him taking whatever the father gave him, basically selling it for cash. He's got all of that now. He has everything, and he sets off for a distant country. And there he squanders his wealth in wild living. And this is about the point in the story where I ask myself, and I would ask you this too, what do you think he was really looking for? Like, what was he really after? What was he really going for? I think some of the clues are actually found in the text. When you look at the story, you can assume that this is a young man. And when I see the story, I ask myself, what in the world was he looking for? I think he was looking to prove that he was a man. I think he was looking to prove himself that he actually was capable of being his own man. He had seen what a good man looked like in his father. He had seen some, at least, moral abilities in his older brother. We get that later in the story. And I think he was after, I want to be my own man. He's asking the question that many teenage boys are asking. What does it take to be a man? And what do I have to do to prove to a world looking on that I am one? And so he goes and he takes the money that he gets from his father, and he goes and he tries to do everything he can to prove it. And I think he goes and he does some man stuff. Look at verse 14. Things that he thinks will prove to him that he is a man, that he is enough, that he has the attention of the world looking on. Verse 14. And after he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. See, this verse gives us context clues as to what he spent his money on. Now, again, even a moderately sensible person would take their father's inheritance, and even if you are going to go to a far country, one of the first things you do in that far country is you do what? You buy property. You buy a place to live. You have something that is yours. But we see in his recklessness here that the things that he must have purchased were things that were just experiences. We don't know exactly what he bought. We don't know exactly what he paid for. And you can fill in the blanks with your own things. But remember the heart of a young teenage man roaming away from the father. There's no doubt that he wants to experience one of the key centrifugal things that makes somebody a man, at least in the eyes of the culture, and that being sex. And I believe he spends large amounts of money trying to prove that he is with a woman. I believe that he goes and he spends money to make friends, essentially using his money to buy gifts, to buy food, to buy pleasure, to go on adventures, to do these things. And that's why when it comes to the point where there is actually a famine in the land, he has nothing to show for it because he bought nothing of substance. He bought nothing that was permanent. He lived for the moment and the fleeting pleasures that the world could offer. And that pleasure and that attention and the power that seemingly gave him for moments, he finds himself in a place of great need. So after that, verse 15, he went and he hired himself out. This person, this young man who went from being a son becomes a slave. This young man who went from being one who had all the resources of the father at his beck and call now goes and is working. This one who even for however the time in between leaving the father's house and getting up to this was living the life of luxury. He at this point, he could have become an Instagram influencer. He could have got all the attention and approval of the world. He would have been making the news. He has nothing. And he hires himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to the fields to feed pigs. It may have been pointed out before to you that for a boy of Jewish heritage, and even to the people listening in the crowd that day, they would have gone, no good Jewish boy would ever feed pigs. Pigs were ceremonially unclean. Jewish people were not allowed to eat pigs. So knowing that this is happening is again continuing to put shock and awe on the people who are there. And if that wasn't bad enough, there's verse 16. It says he longed to fill his stomach with the pods of the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. No one gave him anything. And this is kind of the point in the story. And this is about as far as we're going to get in the story today. We're going to talk about the prodigal going home, leaving home. We're going to talk about the prodigal coming home. We're going to talk about the older brother. We're going to talk about the father for a few weeks. But this is kind of that point in the story where most Christians in the room go, okay, yeah, this is a good message for all those who are kind of out in the far country. This is a good message for all those people who are kind of experiencing these, those things. And maybe even some of you in the room can go, yeah, I remember back to those moments in my life where I kind of was the prodigal, where I took what God had given me and I wasted some good years of my life. And we think back to those things and we think that the prodigal story is just for those who are non-Christians. The prodigal story is just for quote unquote prodigals. But here's what I want you to understand. Prodigal is a condition of the heart. Prodigal is distance and separation from the Father. And I believe everybody in this room would be willing to raise their hand and recognize that there have been times in your life where even though you may have been in the Father's house, you did not have the Father's heart. The point I'm trying to make in this is prodigal is not a position on a map. Prodigal is a condition of the heart. And I would believe in this room, there are people who may not be prodigal with your feet, but you have been prodigal with your heart. Kind of like this, I've talked to people and counseled people going through marriage stuff and even walked through even my own family through divorce. And here's what you can say. The couple lived together in the house and they were living together but divorced way before the papers were signed. Ever seen that? You can see it at your workplace. You can see that employee who they have resigned. They are done, but they continue to show up. And many of us, and this is where Christians are most in danger, because it is possible to give. It is possible to show up at church and to be giving and volunteering. It's possible to be in a community group. It's possible to even be on church staff And in honest moments, when someone genuinely asks you, when was the last time that you genuinely felt close to the Father? You go, I don't know. I know I've been in his house, but I don't know if I feel close. That's why I would say to you again, prodigal is not a position on a map. Just because you are in the room does not mean you are not in the far country. Here's the greatest danger, I believe, for Christians in this, and it's Satan's favorite lie to Christians. It's that religious activity equals relational proximity. That your religious activity, the things you do, the quote-unquote religious things, where it's coming to church, where it's going to group, where it's doing all those things, his favorite lie is that those things equal relational proximity to God. And many of us, whether we realize it or not, we may have drifted and wandered into the far country. And it's honestly not something that's incredibly hard. I think that's the reason why so many people gravitated when we were going through the solid ground. When we had the conversation around drift, we made the point that if you want to drift, you know what you have to do? Nothing. That's why Jesus, when he told the parable of the seeds in Matthew 15:13, he said, there are seed that fell on the shallow soil. And for a little while it sprouted up. But then the cares of the world, the ambitions around money, and the deceitfulness of wealth, they came up and they choked that thing out. Many of us have been there. And we look around and go, I don't really know what happened. I just got busy. I got busy with life. I got busy with family. I got busy with grandkids. I got busy with these things. And I looked around and I go, where is the Father? I feel like I'm in a far country. So I want to ask the question, twofold, of why did he leave home and why do we leave home? Why did he leave home and why do we leave home? See, what's happening in this story, and it's fascinating when you think about this, and it's fascinating when you even look at it in your own life, the times when we leave the Father's house that represents unconditional love, the Father's house that equals provision, the Father's house that equals the care, attention, and the approval that is truly ours. Remember, this father was willing to give him all of his inheritance before he was dead. And again, you can say that's negligence. I say that's love. That points to the fact that this son was one of the Father's beloved children. And he says, son, I love you enough to let you wander. I love you enough to let you tucker yourself out with the things of this world so that you realize just how good it is in my house. See, what's crazy about this is we walk away from the Father while looking for the very things that we can only find in the Father. And is this not our story? Well, I just want to feel loved. Well, where can you find that truly? In God. I would just want to feel loved. So let me go get a relationship with this broken, messed up, jacked up human being. Oh, I just need to know that I'm important. So I'll go kill myself and become a slave to the system to get a job so that there can be a title, a little plaque on the door to say that I'm important. See, the very things that can only be found in the Father's house, we go looking to the rest of the world to find them. It's the stupid irony of life on planet Earth. That the very things that we need the most, we go look for them everywhere except the one place that we can actually find them. Because we hear the voices the same way I believe that this prodigal heard the voices of, I believe I can do it better on my own. See, for a lot of us, and this is the prodigal's problem, and it's our problem. It was a timing thing. Was he going to get the inheritance? Yes or no? Yes, he was totally going to get the inheritance. But he wanted it now. And like a kid in the cereal aisle at the store, he blows a gasket. I need it now. And we're the same way. God, I need this now. I need you to do this now. And those of us who have control freak tendencies, we will say, well, I'm going to go do a God thing. But God's not doing the thing that I want to do his or my way, so I'm going to go circumvent his system and go get it how I need to get it. What happens then is we check out of the place where, again, this son had to do nothing to receive the inheritance. To get that, all he had to do was be born and stick around, and he received all of that. And then he checks out of the Father's house where he would have never had to prove himself because it's in his DNA. It's who he is. He would never have to prove that he was one who's worthy to receive this inheritance. He checks out of a place where he would never have to prove himself, and he runs into a world that demands Prove yourself. Prove yourself. It's the cry of the world that we live in. Prove yourself. Prove that you are worth this attention. Prove that you are worth this scholarship. Prove that you are worth the grandkids calling you. Prove that you are worth being someone whose opinion should be listened to. Prove yourself. You want this job? Prove yourself. You want to volunteer at this thing? Prove yourself. You want this attention? Prove yourself. The world demands that of us. And we get bits and pieces of the cocktail that is the world's affirmation, and we become addicted to it. Because a couple of things happen, and we do something, and somebody says, hey, you're really good at that. And we go, oh, okay. I feel good now. I worked my tail off as a young athlete to fill my room with as many trophies as possible so that my dad could walk in the room and go, you really are something special. They were all over the place. And I would never in a million years put one in a box, put one in a closet. Because I wanted people to walk in the room and to go, wow, you've proven that you are something special. And you got your own set of trophies. Your trophies may be your kids. They may be your grandkids. They may be the car that you have in the driveway. It may be how much money you have in your retirement account. But you have something that you are saying, this is what I'm proving myself with. The problem with proving myself is it doesn't answer this big question. Do you love me? See, deep hardwired within the heart of every human being in this room, there is this question of, do you love me? And that do you love me may be asked to a spouse of, do you love me? And I'm going to look at the things that you do to show me that you actually do love me. You're going to look at maybe even a pastor and go, hey, do I see by the way this person preaches, by the way this person knows what's going on in my life, by the way this person's doing things, that they actually love me? By a boss to go, hey, can I tell that this person actually cares about me, not just what I do? Deep inside the human heart is this question on repeat. Do you love me? Now, in the Father's house, this question is a resounding yes, obviously. It's never been a question. I loved you. And then again, we think, do you love me? And it's yes, okay, so give me exactly what I need. The Father's withholding what we think we need is sometimes the fact and proof that he actually does love us. But we ask this question, do you love me? And the only place that we can actually experience the resounding yes, sometimes we wander away from. And we go to a world that answers this question like this. When we ask the world, when we wander away, when we go to the distant country and we go, hey, world, high school, middle school, workplace, sometimes even our own church family, do you love me? Those distant country places answer a resounding yes. Period. If. Oh, yes, we love you if you continue to make quota. Oh, yes, we love you as long as you do what we tell you to do. Oh, yes, we love you as long as you make the grades that you need to make. Oh, yes, we love you as long as you agree with all the things that we tell you need to agree with. Oh, yes, we love you as long as you don't cause a stir. Oh, yes, we love you as long as you go with our flow. Oh, yes, we love you as long as you make us happy and don't make too much of a fuss. Of course, yes, we love you. You experienced this yet? You experienced this in life? A world that we live in when we run away from the Father's love says, here's all the hoops you've got to go through to continue to get the love that you were created to receive from the Father. See, we run away from his home. And we look for the very things in the world that can only be found in the home of the Father. I can tell you, this will wear you out. To continue to jump through the world's hoops. To answer their ifs. And the reason it wears us out is because there are endless ifs hidden in the far country's love. But there are no ifs hidden in the Father's love. God is never going to look at you and go, I love you if you clean all this up and you figure all this out. God is never going to look and go, hey, I love you if you go 7 weeks without doing that thing. I love you if you tithe. I love you if you come to church. I love you if you plead the blood over your life and you fast and you pray. And God is never looking at us in the Father's love, in the Father's house. He is never going, if. He's going, I love you. You can take the money and leave, and I love you. You can stay right here, and I love you. I love you. There's no ifs in there. It's just love. Yet, we still wander away because we wonder what it would be like out there. What I want you to see as we wrap up is that you, my friend, you are the beloved child. That you, my friend, are the younger brother. That God would love enough to allow room to roam. He would still, deep within his heart, beckon and long for you to enter back into your home. Isaiah 49, 15 and 16. Beautiful verse on this. Same way the Father loves us, I think, is being displayed here in Isaiah. God is talking to the prophet, and he's talking to the prophet to help the people understand the way that the love that God has for the nation of Israel. And God says through the prophet Isaiah, can a mother forget the baby at her breast? And again, like, it's graphic on purpose. And you women in the room, you know, you never were here, and then somebody walked in the room and you went, oh, hey, right? No, that never happened. That's what God is saying here. And not have compassion on the child that she's born, though she may forget, I will not forget you. And to take a step further and to foreshadow even the coming of Christ, see, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. Say, when I look down, what do I see? You. Another verse that I think speaks deep into this is Psalm 139, 13. So you were created in my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. Every single one of you. From the time that you were in your mother's womb, God had a plan for you to be at home with him. That he knew everything that was happening in there. Every neuron that was firing in your little baby brain. He knew everything that you would grow up and do. He knew what homes you would live in, what cities you would live in. He knew everything about you. He had a plan through all of it. A plan that you would find a way home to the place that you were always created to be. And here's where I want to begin to turn the corner and point to the hope that is found in Jesus. See, a lot of times when we think about this story, sometimes it's hard to make the connection between this younger brother who wanders away from home and Jesus. And we think that maybe Jesus is just kind of like, Jesus should just do the things that the older brother should have done. And Jesus should have went into the far country and found his brother. That's like Jesus is the good older brother who does this. But the more and more I looked at the story of the younger son, the more and more I saw Jesus. Think about it. You have in the story a younger son who says, I'm going to take everything that the Father has and has been given to me, and I'm going to go into a distant country. In Jesus, we see the redeemed version of that, of saying, on a mission from the Father, I'm going to take all that he has given me, and I'm going to go into a distant country called planet Earth. Leave the realm of heaven and come to the realm of earth, not on a mission of rebellion, but on a mission of rescue to us here and now. And that very same Jesus says, I will spend all that I have on these people. I will spend all that I have. I will be like a fox without a nest. I will be like a bird without a nest, a fox without a den. I will have no place to lay my head. I will go from town to town, to city, spending my things on giving people experiences, not of this world, but of God. And when the great famine of sin sets in, I will then give my life and have it poured out to the very dregs to take the wrath of God so that I, as a younger brother, could welcome all of my other brothers and sisters in. See, Jesus is the true and greater. He is the redeemed version of the younger brother who makes a way for all who are lost, all who are weary, all who are wandering out into the world to try to figure out what it could offer them to point them back home. There's a passage that I think connects us to this. It's Colossians 1, verse 19 and going on from there. Please just feel how rich and thick this verse is. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him. It's a rich inheritance given into Jesus. And through him to reconcile to himself all things, you included, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through the blood of the cross. Once You were alienated from God. You were the younger brother in the far distant country. You were alienated from God, and you were hostile in your minds because of your evil deeds. But now he has reconciled you to Christ by Christ's physical body through death to present you holy, unblemished, blameless in his presence. And I don't want to get way too foreshadowing into the story, but that is what is coming. That we're able to stand before him holy, unblemished, and blameless in his presence. Actually able to be back home. 1 John 3:1 points to this reality that is on the table for me and you. See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. The reason the world does not know him is that the reason the world does not know us is that it did not know him. It's great love that the Father has lavished on us to make us friends, even more so families, to bring us into this family that we were created to be a part of, to be called children of God, to be welcomed back in. And not just into, I think this is where we get a lot of times, we just think we get welcomed back into this like distant relationship where God kind of remembers all the things that we did, and we kind of come home and God's just like, okay, you can be here, keep it down. And remember, I remember. That's not who he is. And for us in this room, whether you're the prodigal out there in the distant country living the life of sin, or you're the prodigal who's complacent, the prodigal who may have a little bit more tendencies with the older brother who goes, oh, my religion is what makes God do what he needs to do for me. And because I've kept these things, and I've done these things, then God has to do these things for me. Whichever end of the spectrum you are, my prayer is that you realize what is made available to you through faith in Christ. This is one of the verses that when I was a young Christian, actually coming back from CIY, that's not where I want to be. Can we go back to the slides? Did I do that? Hook me up with that John verse. 1 John 12:23. Or it's John 12:23. There it is. Hey. So at the same conference Ariana was talking about, I stumbled across this verse. And I was like, what in the world does that mean? And I've spent my life to this point still trying to figure out what this means. And I want to show it to you today. Jesus replies, anyone who loves me will obey my teaching, which is kind of important. We've been talking about it a lot here recently. If you love me, you're going to do what I tell you to do. And that proves that you love me. So if that's the case, he says, my Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. Now, read this verse again with me. Anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. Now, does that sound like something that happens after you die, or does that sound like something that happens when you have faith? To me, I can't hear that verse and think, oh, that's something that happens. Like, because we sing these songs, well, I can't wait to go home. And we just long, oh, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. I want to go home. But here's what we're going to unpack, and we're going to live in the tension between this reality, because it's our reality as followers of Christ right now. We live in what's called the already, not yet. And this verse is true, and it's saying that we live in this already reality that Jesus and the Father, and again, this blows my mind because I feel like I'm a terrible landlord. They have somehow made a home in me. They're there. And so I go, man, if Jesus and God have made a home in this life, then why would I ever go out there to the far distant country? And here's what's crazy. Even when I do, if they made a home in me, home is never far away. It's right in my heart. It's right where I'm at. So repentance can happen right where you are. You don't have to make an about face and run 50 miles the other direction away from whatever you're in. Repentance and the heart of the Father and your home can happen right here, right now. As we receive communion, get ready to lean back into a time of worship. I pray that sinks deep into your heart. And as you have your communion, I want to give you this question, just to talk with Jesus about as you're meeting and meditating with him. When you roam from home, what are you really looking for? Maybe you've never gone there. Maybe you just kind of drifted and you kind of ping pong back and forth, and then life kind of hits you and you go, oh man, I got to get back in line. That's why I'll see some of you guys, whether it's in town or I'll see you back in church for a little while or somewhere. Usually it happens when I see somebody who had been going to church or hasn't gone in a little while, and I'll see them in town, and I'll be like, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? What's up, man? And they're like, yeah, I'm sorry. We just haven't been to church in a really long time, man. We just had a lot of stuff going on. And I always say the same thing. I say, listen, I'm not keeping attendance. And I don't think God is either. So don't associate your faith with guilt. Associate your faith with the Father and the fact that you're at home with him. So when you roam, what is it? When you roam from home, what's causing the roam? What's causing you to leave? What are you really looking for when you wander away from the Father? Let's pray, and as you commune with him today, pray you lean into that truth. Jesus, we thank you. Your love, grace, and mercy that makes us whole, that makes us new, that bought us with a high, high price of your Son, Jesus. And as I pray, as we see here in our hands your broken body and your poured out blood, that it would remind us of the price that was paid so that we could be anchored in a home where we can experience unconditional love, unconditional trust, comfort, peace, and joy like no other. Father, I pray that as we see your love, as we see what is available and made possible at home in you, you would keep us from wondering. You would keep us from wandering into a world that says, I love you if. You allow us to hear the voice of a Father saying, I love you now. Name.
I've carried a burden too long on my own. I wasn't created to bear it alone. I hear your invitation to let it all go. I see it now, I'm laying it down, and I know that I need you. Run to the Father, fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend, so I'll run to the Father again. Don't have a contest for that kind of love. I don't understand it, I can't comprehend. All into life from death. I feel this rush deep in my chest. Your mercy is calling out. Just as I am, you pull me in, and I know I need you now. I run to the Father, I fall into grace. Done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I'll run to the Father again and again. And I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart found a surgeon, my soul found a friend. So I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Whoa, whoa, and again and again. Whoa, and again.
Can we praise God for the fact that that Father is welcoming us in with open arms today? Friends, that is the good news of the gospel. That by the price that Jesus paid, there is always an open door with the Father. If you're here today and you want to make a decision to step into that, whether that's a decision to step into the waters of baptism, to say that this is the family that I'm part of, I'm dying off to my old heritage and bloodline of sin and being raised up a new creation as a part of this family of faith, if that's the step you need to take, I'd love to talk with you. You can fill that out on one of those cards. And if you're new here with us, I'd love to have a chance to meet you back there in the back, church. I love you, and I'm praying that you would make it your best effort to be here as we dive into these next 4 weeks of homecoming. That you would even now begin to allow your mind to think of the prodigals in your own life. And that you would be a part of God's search party to bring them in, to draw them into his love. And I pray that you feel him drawing you into that this week. I love you, church. Remember, you didn't go to church today. You are the church. Go out and be it to a world that needs to see it. See you back next time.